What's up, cool people? I'm Matt Conroy. Welcome back to our Bible study. All right, so we're going to be talking about Numbers chapter 5 right now, and leading up to this, unsurprisingly, given that this is, Numbers, we've been getting mostly the numbers of, first Israel's fighting forces, and then the numbers of the Levites. Because the Levites were, really important, helping to move and work with the tabernacle and whatnot. But really, beyond just counting their numbers, the broader theme since the end of Exodus has been preparing God's people to go to the promised land, whether it be, giving them laws on how they're supposed to behave, or giving them instructions for how they're supposed to move about through the wilderness along the way there. That's been the overarching theme. So Numbers is not just going to be numbers the entire time. It's not all going to be counting various subdivisions of the Israelites. And we're going to see some of that in this chapter. So, here we go. Numbers chapter 5. The Lord gave these instructions to Moses. Command the people of Israel to remove from the camp anyone who has a skin disease or a discharge, or who has become ceremonially unclean by touching a dead person. This command applies to men and women alike. Remove them so they will not defile the camp in which I live among them. So the Israelites did as the Lord had commanded Moses, and removed such people from the camp. Just footnote there just says skin disease is traditionally rendered leprosy, but it's leprosy was sort of a catch-all term for various skin diseases. Now, it says remove them from the camp. I think what it means by that is not like, hey, guess what? These people don't get to go to the promised land. Bye-bye. It's more of a, all right, let's separate all these people so that as we're, moving about and, living our daily lives and traveling, that these people with their, diseases and things like that will not affect other people or their things and end up making other people or things unclean. But we might get more detail on that starting in verse 5. Then the Lord said to Moses, give the following instructions to the people of Israel. If any of the people, men or women, betray the Lord by doing wrong to another person, they are guilty. They must confess their sin and make full restitution for what they have done, adding an additional 20% and returning it to the person who was wronged. But if the person who was wronged is dead, and there are no near relatives to whom restitution can be made, the payment belongs to the Lord and must be given to the priest. Those who are guilty must also bring a ram as a sacrifice, and they will be purified and made right with the Lord. All the sacred offerings that the Israelites bring to a priest will belong to him. Each priest may keep all the sacred donations that he receives. Okay, so is the sacrifice of a ram only in the case of them making restitution to the priest? Or is that supposed to apply to all, wrongdoings when they're trying to, pay back and make up for it? That's not entirely clear here. But it's still, at the very least, it applies when, the person is dead, there's no next of kin available, and they basically pay the price to the priest. Now, it doesn't really specify what exact kind of wrongdoing it's talking about here, but, I would assume it's not the type of thing where, it's already been mentioned and there has already been sort of like an assigned punishment for it. I mean, I could be wrong in that assumption. This could be in addition to all that. But I think at the very least it covers, wrongdoings that haven't been overtly and outright discussed in the previous chapters with all the different commands that God gave his people. Footnote there. Instead of bringing a ram as a sacrifice and they will be purified, it says, or bring a ram for atonement, which will make atonement for them. Okay. Either way, it's a similar idea. I do also find it interesting how it mentions that they're betraying the Lord by doing wrong to another person. Because while this is even more abundantly clear in the New Testament, even in the Old Testament, the idea still held true that, yes, they were supposed to, be kind to one another, care about each other, help each other out. The golden rule, while it was mentioned outright by Jesus, first off, that wasn't even actually the first mention of it among God's people. I think it comes up first somewhere in Deuteronomy, or maybe we actually read that already. I don't know. But in any case, it was, just because Jesus said it doesn't mean that it was a brand new thing that only applied from then on. Anywho, okay. So, it's all that to say, yeah, doing wrong to another person is also essentially doing wrong to God. Something to take note of. Anyway, verse 11. And the Lord said to Moses, "Give the following instructions to the people of Israel. Suppose a man's wife goes astray, and she is unfaithful to her husband, and has sex with another man, but neither her husband nor anyone else knows about it. She has defiled herself, even though there was no witness, and she was not caught in the act. If her husband becomes jealous and is suspicious of his wife, and needs to know whether or not she has defiled herself, the husband must bring his wife to the priest. He must also bring an offering of 2 quarts of barley flour to be presented on her behalf. Do not mix it with olive oil or frankincense, for it is a jealousy offering, an offering to prove whether or not she is guilty." So there's a particular procedure, I guess, being laid out here for alright, if you suddenly start getting a jealous feeling that makes no sense regarding your spouse, here's, at least, in this particular time and place, and with, the Israelites at this time, it was okay, here's what you can do to try and, seek an answer if you're suspicious of this kind of thing. Because, I mean, the spouse in question wouldn't know for sure because there were no witnesses. They haven't actually found out, but, just like in modern times, there can be situations where it's you're spending a lot of time with this other person. Not exactly, super duper normal behavior. or you just otherwise get suspicious. I mean, shoot, you can't even put it past God to just fill somebody with that jealous spirit, or even with some sort of discernment that something like this has happened. But anyway, I digress. Let's continue along in this process, or whatever you want to call it, with verse 16. The priest will then present her to stand trial before the Lord. He must take some holy water in a clay jar and pour into it dust he has taken from the tabernacle floor. When the priest has presented the woman before the Lord, he must unbind her hair and place in her hands the offering of proof, the jealousy offering, to determine whether her husband's suspicions are justified. The priest will stand before her, holding the jar of bitter water that brings a curse to those who are guilty. The priest will then put the woman under oath and say to her, "If no other man has had sex with you, you have not gone astray and defiled yourself while under your husband's authority, may you be immune from the effects of this bitter water that brings on the curse. But if you have gone astray by being unfaithful to your husband and have defiled yourself by having sex with another man," at this point the priest must put the woman under oath by saying, "May the people know that the Lord's curse is upon you when he makes you infertile, causing your womb to shrivel and your abdomen to swell. Now may this water that brings the curse enter your body and cause your abdomen to swell and your womb to shrivel." And the woman will be required to say, "Yes, let it be so." And the priest will write these curses on a piece of leather and wash them off into the bitter water. He will make the woman drink the bitter water that brings on the curse. When the water enters her body, it will cause bitter suffering if she is guilty. Okay, sorry. I didn't want to read that entire section at first, but I realized that it's stopping in the middle of what it's saying there. So, I read both kind of paragraphs there. Okay, so man, at least in this case, man gets suspicious of wife, brings her to the priest along with the barley flour. The priest, sets her on trial, so to speak, takes holy water in a clay jar with some dust from the tabernacle floor, and then puts the barley flour into the woman's hand, and then a bunch of words are said, and then priest writes the curses of the judgment water, or whatever you want to call it. Priest writes the curses down on a piece of leather and washes those curses off of the leather into the water. And then the woman will drink that water. Still haven't explained what she's doing with the barley flour in her hands. Verse 25, probably just going to go through to the end now. The priest will take the jealousy offering from the woman's hand, lift it up before the Lord, and carry it to the altar. He will take a handful of the flour as a token portion and burn it on the altar, and he will require the woman to drink the water. If she has defiled herself by being unfaithful to her husband, the water that brings on the curse will cause bitter suffering. Her abdomen will swell and her womb will shrink, and her name will become a curse among her people. But if she has not defiled herself and is pure, then she will be unharmed and will still be able to have children. This is the ritual law for dealing with suspicion. If a woman goes astray and defiles herself while under her husband's authority, or if a man becomes jealous and is suspicious that his wife has been unfaithful, the husband must present his wife before the Lord, and the priest will apply this entire ritual law to her. The husband will be innocent of any guilt in this matter, but his wife will be held accountable for her sin. I mean, obviously this is the situation, the procedure to be followed for suspicion of the wife, thus kind of implying that the man is not guilty. But I'm realizing I probably missed some footnotes somewhere in here. Okay, yeah, the footnote about 2 quarts was originally just 1/10 of an ephah. Footnote there at causing your womb to shrivel. When he causes your thigh to waste away. Well, that's a little bit different. But, I mean, is it possible that that was maybe like a Hebrew figure of speech that was, meant more as, talking about a woman's womb? I don't know. But in either case, abdomen swelling and also some other part, whether thigh or womb, shriveling up. I mean, the womb shriveling thing does make a little bit more sense if the abdomen's swelling, because then it's like the swollen abdomen is kind of pushing on the woman's womb. Yeah. I don't know why it uses multiple footnotes for the same thing there, rather than doing what it has done previously and just said, all right, seen also in this verse and this verse. But anyway, so at least part of the barley flour winds up on the altar. Still not 100% sure what happens to the rest of the barley flour, but I mean, that could also, since it was still like an offering thing of a sort, it could be that the rest of it went to the priest and he and his family could use it because as priests they were allowed to do those things. That was part of how they got their, food and things like that. But yeah, I feel like the modern day methods of trying to figure out this sort of thing are a bit easier, certainly a bit more convenient than that, and they're also a bit more private, which can be good or bad depending on the situation. But anyway, I digress. So, like I said kind of early on, we're not just tallying up the people of Israel in numbers here. There's also still part of the broader theme of preparing them to go to the Promised Land. Because they still haven't left for the Promised Land yet. They're about to, at some point kind of soon-ish, but still preparing. Alright, so that does it for Numbers 5. Turns out the whole book isn't all exactly about numbers all the time. But, I mean, there's only so many subdivisions of the Israelites that could really be counted and kept track of. But anyway, so, as always, like and share if you enjoyed the video, subscribe to the channel and click the bell to get updates when I post new videos. Look down in the description to get info on other social media pages and all that good stuff. And leave comments below there with any thoughts you have. So that's it. Hope you're all doing well. Hopefully I'll see you for the next video. But until then, stay cool, people.